Hello, everyone. Just seeing the people flooding in. I'm just going to wait for a couple of minutes while we wait for everyone to arrive. It always feels so weird in a webinar not to be able to see everyone. Just see these little numbers racking up the bottom.
Well, and also to do the bit where you sort of say, "We are here. We will be starting. Please hang on." But just have to keep saying that. Yeah.
Great. Welcome, welcome. Okay. The number seems to be fairly static for now, so I'll just get going. Hello, everyone. My name's Jo Hunter, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of 64 Million Artists, and I am here with Damien.
Hello, I'm Damien. I'm the interim executive director, and I've been doing the role that the chief operating officer will be taking on. I was previously on the board of 64 Million Artists, and I will be stepping back onto the board when the chief operating officer takes up their post. So, just for clarity, I'm not applying for this role. It is a new role, but I've been sort of filling in for the last 6 months. And over to Tina.
Thanks, Damien. So hello, everyone. Good to see you this morning. So my name is Tina Ajonima, and I'm one of the co-chairs and the 64 Million Artist Board. And you notice I say co-chair. We've adopted a co-leadership model for the board that's been working really well. And I'm happy to share more if anyone has any questions about that. But really glad to be with you all today.
Great. Thanks so much, Tina. And Zara, who is our team administrator, is also here supporting us and can also jump in if we need to on any questions. So what we're going to do this afternoon, is to just take you through a few slides talking about the company and the role. Then we're going to answer some of the questions that some of you have submitted in advance. We're going to try and do all of that by about 12:30, and then we'll have half an hour to answer any further questions that people have. I will just share my screen. So there we go. And if you need closed captions, they're available at the bottom of the screen. We are using the Q&A function rather than the chat to record your questions. So as we're going through the presentation, please feel free to submit those. The reason we do this as a webinar and not as a kind of normal Zoom session is that we know that for some people they will want to remain anonymous throughout. So although it feels strange to us not to be able to see you, it feels more important, and also for a sort of fairness in the recruitment process as well. So feel free, if you want to, you can have your name when you're asking questions, but you can also remain anonymous. We also record these sessions, and again, they won't be able to see who's asking questions. It's just so that we can record the webinar and keep that on the website, so that if anyone else wants to see it, then they can. And again, you can refer back to it if you want to. We'll also record the one that is next week when there may be different questions. So the 64 Million Artists has been around for 10 years, legally this June. And we work with three core programs, main program areas, as well as our core team. This role forms part of the core team, and Damien's going to talk more about that later. But I feel like it's really important to say that to us, the core team kind of underpins everything that we do. So whilst I'm going to talk about the content of the programs, for us, we are very much a kind of people-first organisation, and all of the work that we do in the core team, working a 4-day week, taking August off, putting people first, thinking about how ideas travel throughout the organisation is something that feels really important and is always the first thing that we talk about when we're talking about the company. So the first program area is public programs. So we have you may have heard of the January Challenge, which is our sort of largest public-facing program. It's totally free. All of our public work is free, and 160,000 people take part each year. January Challenge is made up of 31 days of little creative prompts that we work with creativity champions, artists, organisations to set for the whole nation. And lots of individuals and families take part, but also we have a model that works really well with what we call creativity champions. So people who work with people. So that might be librarians or teachers or social workers or youth workers, but it also might be the HR director at a company or somebody working in their local community. And they really seize on the January Challenge and they run it in they take the January Challenge and make it work for them in their area. It's really popular. We've just had our 11th year of the January Challenge. And like I said, 160,000 people take part, and there's an 8 million reach on social media, lots of people sharing what they're doing. We also have now extended that to go to a year-round program. So as well as our weekly creative prompts, we have lots of workshops, events, sessions for creativity champions to sort of support them throughout the year to help 64 million people feel like they are creative across the country. Public programs leads on to leadership programs, which is a sort of central pillar of our work, looking at leadership across a range of different perspectives. But primarily we run a program called Leading Researchers, which runs in 6 different Russell Group universities across the UK. So Leading Researchers really takes creativity, and it looks at how we develop, how sort of professor level academics can develop their next big idea for research. So it takes them across a 6-month program and helps them sort of think about themselves and who they are and what they want, and develop these sort of big ideas that then have impact in the world. It's a huge area of our work that's sort of developing all the time. So as well as our sort of core program of Leading Researchers, we also run bespoke programs we're doing a big program around climate research. We're doing a program called Elevate, which is for women of colour. We're doing a program for earlier career researchers at University College Dublin. So it's an area that we have sort of developed a specialism in, that people come to us a lot for. So both public programs and leadership programs are really well established core programs that deliver on our mission. And then partnership programs is a new area of our work. Up until now, we have always had a fair amount of work that is bespoke, that comes into us, from a range of different people. So it might be a council, it might be a corporate company, it might be Culture Mile is a business improvement district, or we've worked on lots of cities of culture, and they'll come to us and say, we want to use creativity to establish a culture of innovation here, or we want to help it to use, to help participants or residents inform our strategy over here, or we're trying to enliven creativity in our community. We've done lots and lots and lots of that work over the last 10 years. One of the things that we're trying to do now is become, that work was very reactive, and now what we're trying to do is become slightly more proactive about how we position and strategize around that work. So we are, Lorato, who is our head of partnerships, has been working over the last 6 months, and we're working over the next 6 months to really define a few key offers that we'll be taking out into different markets. The first thing we've launched, and we're sort of testing and trying, is a new program called Creative Courage, which starts in a couple of weeks, which is for individuals. It's the first time that we've ever offered a paid for program to individuals. Again, it's a sort of 6-month program, fully online, and it's a really, really exciting new model for us. And that's one of the things that we really love to do, is to sort of be able to launch something, test it, try it, see if it works, and then build on from there. So that's what a lot of what partnership programs are doing at the moment, is testing and trying and developing these new models to see how we can grow the future of that work. So they're the sort of 3 key program areas, all working towards our sort of central mission of, enabling the creativity or catalyzing the creativity of everyone in the UK. And Damien's just going to talk a bit about the core team and this role.
Great, thanks, Jo. So yeah, as Jo said, those 3 areas of work are kind of underpinned by everything that the core team deliver, which would be the key area of responsibility for this role. And it really is, there's kind of 2 aspects to the role, and they probably are effectively 50-50% of the energy that is required. The first is on kind of processes and systems, so how things work, how meetings are scheduled, how our finances work, that kind of thing. And then the other half is kind of how our values are sort of really brought to life in the way that we work. So Jo's mentioned that the organisation operates a 4-day week. We take August off. We try and deliver the kind of most caring, compassionate kind of ways of working, because we feel that really kind of carries through into the way that the work is delivered. So this role is really about sort of being the kind of guardian of that way of working for the organisation, while also having a sort of practical focus on making sure that the finances are working, that people know where things are filed, that our HR systems are operational, and that people's annual leave is accounted, and so on. So it is a kind of 50-50 of those two aspects of the role, which actually I think is kind of exciting, because you switch from, has a birthday card been bought for the next person's birthday, and is everybody aware of what time that meeting is, through to thinking about, in a year's time, what will our strategy be around kind of recruitment and so on. So it's those two aspects of the role that feel important. And when I'm going to switch to the next slide, Joe. So as an organisation, we are you can see here the kind of way we work. So there's the 3 programs, as Joe's outlined, and there are kind of various staff who work in those areas. And then in the core team, it really is this role and Zara, who are kind of mostly delivering, along with our head of marketing and communications. And then the actual day-to-day operational delivery around our finances is managed by an external supplier who we work with quite closely, and who this role liaises with and kind of meets on a regular basis and oversees that function. But they actually manage, for example, payroll. And then we also have an HR advisor who helps with our policies and is there in case we need them. And then we also have a regular research associate who work on a contract with us, who helps evaluate our impact. And so this role also kind of liaises and manages the relationship with them. It's also worth mentioning that we do a lot of our delivery is, especially in leadership programs and partnership programs, is done through work with a range of facilitators and coaches. So they work freelance. And also, Joe's mentioned the creativity champions, and they who work with us in public programs, and those are paid sort of experts by experience, and people, artists and individuals who are delivering that work. So it's kind of keeping an eye on that whole picture is a core part of this role. And then I think I'm handing on to Tina.
I think you are, Damien. Thank you. So I'm really happy I get to talk about values, which is something very close to my heart, and something I feel that 64 does really well. And by doing really well, I mean in terms of living values. 64 is a very values-driven and mission-led organisation. And the great thing about the organisation is it doesn't just speak to the values, it actually models them in everything that it does. So the organisation has, it was recently 3 values, but it's now 4, because we're always growing and we're always learning. But values that underpin everything that we do. So underpin who we are, underpin how we engage and relate to each other internally, and also underpin how we kind of partner with collaborators and communities and other organisations, and kind of deliver our work. And so you see them on the screen. So we've got curiosity, care, belonging, and courage. I'll just say a little bit about each of these and how I see these in the organisation. And so in terms of curiosity, 64 is very comfortable with the process of asking the questions, right? So asking the questions why, but also asking the questions what if, and what could it look like? So really kind of engaging people to think beyond what they currently see, how they currently experience things, and start to kind of ideate what something different or better could look like. Joe's already mentioned the fact that the organisation's people first, and that really shows up in the care value. So very human-centred, very people first, always considering what people, whether it's in the organisation or external to the organisation, need in any moment, and what could be done to kind of see that and acknowledge that and centre that in how the work is done. In terms of the approach to belonging, the work that 64 does is very inclusive, in the sense that it seeks to create spaces that allow for the fullness of people to be present, and spaces that allow for the fullness of people to be seen and to be honoured. And that doesn't always happen, right, in this work. So it's really important that that's happening. And then the newest addition to the values family is courage. Very relevant addition. And I think for me, this speaks to a few things. It speaks to, the ability of the organization to take risks. Doing a 4-day week, doing August off, that's a risk, that the organization was willing to take because it speaks to the care value, it speaks to the people first value. I also see with courage, allowing for emergence to happen. So, really kind of creating an open space that allows for emergence, that allows for learning. And then also connected to the courage piece is a piece around humility, which I definitely see in how 64 kind of shows up in its work and how it shows up in its relationships with other organizations and also relationships with people in the community that it works with. So, as I say, it's a very, very value-centered organization. I've been with the organization for 4 years now, I think, just in a board role. And aside from the amazing work, external work that the organization does, I think it's the values that are embedded and modeled consistently that kind of have kept me here, and I think will keep me here for the foreseeable.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Tina. And do you want to just say a little bit about sort of how the board works? Because
Yeah.
obviously this role would intersect a lot with the board, that organise with Zara support, organise the board meetings and programme the board meetings alongside Tina and Carol, who's our other co-chair.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'd probably say a couple of things. I like to think that the board relationship with members of the team is very collaborative. And it's much more of a kind of like a partnership, I think, than kind of anything else, which I think we will appreciate, meaning that we're all able to come together, we're all able to have conversations about the work, we're all able to kind of troubleshoot, we're all able to come together and ideate, and we're all able to come together and kind of participate in exercises which help or open up space to allow for our own creativity. And that doesn't always happen in other spaces I occupy. So I always value those creative moments with 64. So in that sense, it's the board, I think, operates maybe slightly differently than some other boards you might see in the space. But in addition to that, we're also here to provide, the kind of advice that we need to, and to provide the challenge that we need to as well, which is also necessary for the organisation. So we will also ask questions. We will also prod. We will also ask the what if, what could it look like if, and kind of do all those other things as well. We have adopted a co-leadership model, which was kind of deliberate on our part. And I think that speaks to the idea of, or speaks to the value of collaboration, and speaks to the value of kind of collective knowledge and collective effort, which again is something that might not be on this slide, but also speaks to the work of 64. And in kind of using that model or working with that model, that really does allow for, again, I would say extended partnership in terms of the board's work and in terms of the work and role of the board chair as well. We as a board come together a few times a year for our board meetings, which are, spaces where we will discuss organizational business and also kind of tackle any kind of strategic thinking that needs to happen. And then we also try to come together in person when we can. And we just had an in-person session yesterday, which is great. Very valuable getting those in-person moments. And with those in-person moments, we don't just come together as a board, but we also get to meet the team as well and spend time with the team. And again, I think that's really important, and maybe speaks again to the slight difference in terms of how this board is constituted vis-a-vis maybe other boards that might exist. So that in-person time, or that time with the team, is incredibly valuable. And I, as a member of the board, I feel makes my allows me to perform my role as a board member, even better than it would otherwise.
Thanks so much, Tina. Great. So just in terms of practically, this role operates at it's it's a predominantly remote role, although we always do work on a Tuesday at Somerset House in London. And whilst we always work flexibly, we really do we do like people to come into the office once a week on a Tuesday, because we think it's really important in terms of how the team work together. Of course, there's always exceptions for various days or reasons, but that is something that is something that everyone does, and they all come in on a Tuesday unless they're out delivering somewhere else. We work, we're really up for flexible working and flexible hours. On the whole, we tend to have core hours of around 10 till 4, and you can work you sort of 8 hours around those hours. But of course, pickups, I finish at 2:30 on a Wednesday, so that I can pick up my kids and I make up the hours elsewhere. So there's plenty of flexibility within that. But we do work Monday to Friday and Monday to Thursday, and on the whole don't work Fridays. And we found that that's the best way for the 4-day week to work, is that we all have a collective downtime on a Friday, so that you don't come in on a Monday with someone else having sent you a whole bunch of emails. We take 20-day holidays alongside bank holiday, and then a 4-week break in August. So that is not that's additional to your 20 days, and we tend to close in between Christmas and New Year as well. We also give you your birthday off, so there's plenty of time for rest and recovery. We run a Nest pension, which is 3% or 5%, and we also have an employee assistance programme. You'll also get a training and development budget, which is £1,000 a year. We really allow you to have the flexibility in how you choose to use that. So, Zara brilliantly does loads of amazing creative courses and is doing stand-up and all sorts of other great stuff. Sam's going on a songwriting program. Some people are doing a public speaking course, or, something related to the sort of day-to-day of their work. But we feel like creativity is the day-to-day of your work. So that feels really important that people can use that how they want to. So we are now going to answer some of your questions. So like I said, please do stick them in the Q&A box below. But I will also start by answering some questions that we've had in advance. So one of them was around how we are funded. So at the moment we are around, the target for this year is around 25% public, funding from sort of public and private sources, and 75% earned income. That's actually higher I think last year it was about 11% public funding, but we do have, we've been lucky enough to get a sort of relatively large Arts Council England grant at the end of last year that runs for 2.5 years. We're coming to the end of an Esme Fairbairn grant, which we're going back in for. So we are looking at sort of slightly, hopefully not increasing the percentage, but increasing the amount of funding to sort of help to grow our public programmes. But we really like to earn about 75% of our income, as it just feels much more secure and a much more flexible way of working. We're in a relatively strong financial position. We should turn over somewhere between 850 and 950,000 this year. Maybe we'll make it to 1 million. That would be exciting. So yeah, that's sort of an increase on around so last year we increased it from around 40% the year by about 40% from the year before, and again we're looking at a sort of 10 to 20% increase this year, although again that may well go up. One of these questions, I haven't prepped you, Tina, but hopefully Damien might have prepped this, is what is our highlight of the last 10 years? So I'll say mine, and then you two can come in on yours. For me, the highlight is really the growth of the team. Like, it is, I feel really privileged to have the team that we have. It's a really dedicated team. In 10 years, I think we've only had 3 people leave the organisation. It's a team that feels really committed, really creative, a really brilliant mix of people who bring a real range of experience. And yeah, it's from sort of starting it 10 years ago on this sort of little side project, and feel like it's a really thriving team, for me, has been a real highlight. Damien?
Tina mentioned we had an away day yesterday, and we spent a bit of time with every member of the board introducing themselves, and somebody at one point went, "Oh, I don't have any of your experience," and then went on to describe their amazing kind of journey as a person and as a person in this world. And for me, I think it's the opportunity both on the board but in the team as well, to have this incredible diversity of different backgrounds and experiences, and I think as someone who's worked a long time in a lot of kind of cultural sector organisations, that's not something that is actually something that happens everywhere. So I think that that presents challenges because people we have to work hard to find sort of common ground, common sort of shared ways of communicating effectively with each other. But I think that range of perspectives is what I've really enjoyed in every way I've been involved with the organisation.
I'm going to take both of what you said and say yes to both of those. And also, I think I'd probably add, and this is less of an event or a thing, and I guess more of an experience / a general practice. And I would say that I really appreciate the fact that we do have the space and there is the willingness to think about how to do things differently. And we've adopted that. So it's not just in the organisation, but we've also adopted that on the board as well. And being able to come together and have those conversations around, what would it look like if we did this or tried this, and how can we as a board maintain more of a closeness to what the organisation's doing whilst not being too close to overshadow rather. I think, being able to have those conversations and being able to do that exploration with a group of people who also want to be able to have those conversations and do that exploration, I think has been really, really, really great to see. And I'll just add another thing, and then also in terms of highlights, the programmes. So all the programs that 64's been doing and keeps doing, and every time we get like information about a new program the organisation's doing, that's really exciting.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Tina. Great. So there was a couple about sort of strategy and ambition for the next few years. It feels like what we have, we're into our sort of growing up phase, we've done a lot of growing up, and now it feels like we've done a lot of work over the last few years, kind of really moving from what started out as very much a kind of campaigning organisation around everyone's creativity and changing sort of cultural strategy and thinking about that kind of cultural policy, into becoming very kind of heads down in delivering a lot of work around sort of in communities and with leadership and across the public programme, which has been great and has sort of developed us as a reputation and also a huge wealth of kind of experience in developing different kinds of work. And it now feels like, we have a really clear ambition around the public programme. So we've really grown that from being just the January Challenge to thinking about a year-round programme in which, we are really focusing specifically on creativity champions and this idea of a kind of ripple effect or cascade model where we're working with lots of different people across the country who are then embedding cultures of creativity in care homes, in schools, in communities, in workplaces. Wherever you go, there's a model for creativity to be embedded in that place. And we're sort of growing and developing that all the time in partnership with all of those people. And then across the leadership and partnerships, we're really, what started out as, very clear on mission work, but also, very much a kind of way of funding us and sort of being a really secure funding model. It's now looking at sort of how do we really lean into the creativity in that and have the confidence to lean into the creativity in that and take it out of just academia. Most of our leadership work is in academia, and we're really looking at how we kind of bring that into different areas and sort of inject more of our creativity into different places. What's been really nice is it often used to feel like the public programme was quite separate to the partnership and leadership programmes, whereas now they feel like they're really, there's a funnel of people coming from the January Challenge, wanting to explore a bit more work, investing, in further programmes. And we're sort of being able to see people travel through the life of the organisation. So that feels like it is sort of emergent. It's sort of that strategy is emergent, and it's always, we're not very much like this is exactly how it should be. A lot of our work is looking at, is thinking emergently and working really closely in partnership with people. I'd say the thing that we're really focused on over the next 3 years is really improving the way that we talk about our work. So going back to that idea of more campaigning, thinking about how we're talking about our work around workplace culture, around, embedding culture in a place, embedding creativity in a cultural place. So really thinking about research, so continuing to work with Teal on a co-research model. So again, working with teachers to tell this, how, in order to convince schools to embed culture of creativity. You want to work with teachers to do that, and parents and families, and doing the same in a care home. And how are we working with people to do that? So research, talking about what we do, and sort of getting back into that sort of more policy space. And that's some of the stuff that there's some stuff I'm keen to do that this role will allow me to do, but also I think this role will also be really involved in. So that's in terms of.
Can I jump in?
Yes.
I jump in, Jo? Just because also there's a couple of, just expanding on that, there's a couple of questions in the Q&A about priorities for this role.
Yeah.
And I would say, on the basis of what Jo's just outlined, there's ambitious plans to grow and to do more. And so the priority, I think, for this role is about preserving all the points that Tina made about our values and the way that we work while we grow. So the team has expanded quite a lot just in the last couple of years, and so it's about sort of making sure that we can achieve those ambitions, deliver on what Jo's just outlined, but while retaining that kind of emphasis on care and the way that we collaborate together. And I think it's also, there's a question about how the role evolved. And that partly explains why I've done this role as an interim basis, is that the organisation grew quite organically, and somebody who'd been with the organisation for the longest time, apart from Jo, had sort of stepped into a role in a sort of general management role. And when she decided to go travelling and needed to leave, rather than just recruit straight away, we took the time to kind of hold on to the organisation through a period of growth. So I stepped off the board into this role, and now I think we're in a really stable place with a very established team, and it's a great time for somebody to come in and kind of build on that. And also, again, with that emphasis on kind of care and taking time, Jo's having a sabbatical over the course of this year, which has meant some time away. So I think part of that as well is that this role will take on some of those responsibilities around care and supporting the team, which Jo has previously done, to give Jo the space to do more of that campaigning. So hopefully that answers some of the questions about priorities. Do you want to carry on?
Thanks. Yeah, just so there's just a couple more. So just in terms of the practicalities around, there was something about finance and HR and how much experience is needed and how much of the time would be spent doing that. So yes, we do have an external finance company who are brilliant and have really transformed the way that we work over the last, they've been with us about a year and a half, and also an HR advisor. So there's people with those expertise in the team. You need to have a good comprehensive knowledge of finance because that will be your role to kind of oversee that in the team, but you're certainly not they're doing all the work on the accounts and maintaining the budgets and doing the spreadsheets, that kind of thing. I said about the weekly meetup, so that is unlikely to change. I don't think we will require people to go to work more than once a week in the office, although that facility is available, so you can work in Somerset House multiple days if you prefer to do that. But I also don't think it will reduce. So I do think we will continue to ask people to come in once a week. And then there was a couple of questions about the kind of average week, Damien, and the kind of immediate, how much you spend on the kind of immediate and the long term. Did you want to talk about those?
Yeah, I think so. As Jo said, we have a day in the office on Tuesday. We usually put a lot of our within the team meetings into that day to try and do them face to face. And some of this role, along with Zara, is about sort of thinking through how to be most efficient about those meetings. So there's a fair amount of sort of thinking about kind of how we work on a kind of about kind of every 3 weeks. I will have a kind of morning which is pretty much dedicated to finances and thinking through where we're up to and looking at cash flow and liaising with Beehive. Over the recent months, there's been quite a lot of time dedicated to recruitment and thinking about kind of writing job descriptions and then making sure that the practical things about advertising roles and so on is done. Increasingly trying to spend some time thinking about marketing and communications and supporting the two members of the team who deliver that and trying to think about that strategically. And then and this perhaps this will be a couple of people have asked the question about what keeps you awake at night, and I think part of that is, as any organisation that working at this scale, is about thinking about finances and cash flow, and making sure that we've got a steady stream of sort of funding applications going, making sure our relationships with The universities and other clients are kind of working well, making sure that we're invoicing promptly and that we're paying, people promptly. But that's what keeps me awake at night. Jo and Tina, what about you?
Yeah, I think that's the main thing. And again, like I said, budget wise, we are always in a pretty healthy place. It feels very rare that we're sort of like, we won't meet our budget this year, we won't meet our targets this year. But it can be, due to the nature of the work, more sort of like, oh, will we reach them by this point in the calendar year where there's a hole? So that's sometimes the cash flow, yes, cash flow issues rather than budget. So that's definitely my predominant one. And I think, for me, it's always the thing that brings me the most concern is team and associates and just making sure they're all right. And on the whole, people seem pretty happy and we work really well together. But it really pains me if anyone is having a hard time, because it's something that we work so hard on, basically. And then I think for me, it's then I flip the question to say, because the things that I'm more interested, it's like what keeps me alive in the day is like the things as sort of thinking about how we can really sort of become better. I think we do such good partnership work across public programs is doing such amazing work, and so much of it happens through really good word of mouth that then people are passing it on and passing it on because they love it and because it's accessible and because it's easy to pass on. And so that is great, and I'm really keen to be like, okay, so how do we talk about this more in a way that then we can systematize, how can we get into every school? How could we be in every care home? Not us, but how could we be helping people think about that at scale? And that's the thing that kind of I feel really excited about, is like, how do we take this to the next level?
Yeah, and if I can just add to that. So again, I think I'll take the things that keep me excited during the day. Because I like to sleep soundly if I can. I think for me it's the 64 is doing such incredible work, and I think we're doing what we can at the moment to tell the story of the work that we do, but I think there is so much more that could be done in being able to tell that story and to tell that story to a larger kind of group of people, in the hopes that it will inspire them to be able to kind of start exploring their own innate creativity. So that's something I'm really excited about.
Great. And then obviously we've been answering some of the Q&A ones as we've been going along, but just there's a couple of practical things around pay. So 60,000 is the top limit for the job, although you also will get £100 a month hybrid working allowance. And we do increase pay every year. It's not normally performance related. We normally do a standard raise across the organisation. And then if there are job changes, so if someone's job role has changed, we change salary then. And probation is 3 months. So those were things that people had raised. Damien, do you want to take us through the Q&A?
Yes, sure. There's I'm not going to answer them necessarily in order, but one thing that we haven't really talked about in much detail at the moment is about EDI, and there's a question about a focus on EDI. What's been our EDI strategy to date, and the focus over the next 12 months. And hopefully, as you kind of heard from everything we've talked about in terms of our values and the way that we work, and belonging being that really core value for us, we spent a day in March as a team just exploring what belonging meant for us as a team, and some of that was about practical things, about how we ensure people within the team, but also within our work, feel welcomed and feel fully able to bring their whole selves to to engage with us. But some of that also is about practical kind of changes that we're trying to make, training that we're trying to implement. So, but as an example, one thing that we're doing as a team over the next kind of a year is we're going to invite people with specific expertise and lived experience to come in and talk about kind of what creativity means to them. And we take a very and to use that to inspire us to sort of constantly question and challenge our work. So a lot of the things that we do are sort of giving ourselves the space to think about some of these issues and where we could grow and where we could do more, and then trying to put those into practical action. So, for example, your applications for this role will be read blind by a diverse panel of people. We'll try and ensure that the process is as inclusive and as open as possible. But I wondered, Tina, do you want to say any more about the organisation's approach to EDI?
I don't think I have too much more to say than what you said, Damien. I think I will say that in the time that I've been with 64, there has been, a real kind of commitment and real effort made across the organization to be much more intentional about thinking about this, intentional about thinking about inclusion, both in terms of, again, communities that the organization works with, partner organizations the organization works with, and the team. As I kind of said when I was talking through the values, that kind of intentionality kind of extends to how we create spaces that allow for the wholeness and the fullness of people to be seen. This type of work, and I can speak about this because outside of my 64 chair work, I do lots of work on EDI with other organizations in the social impact space. And I think, we always say this work is never fully done, it's never fully complete. You never get to the point where everything is done, but it's about the journey, it's about the activity, it's about the practice. And I would say for 64, there's definitely a focus on the practice. So how do we make sure we continue to grow and develop our practice around, inclusion, around equity, around belonging, around diversity, and then how do we make sure that that is that shows up in the work that we do and how we do the work.
Great, thank you. And there's a question from Brent, which I'm going to put to you, Jo, which is, how connected do you feel to your final beneficiaries, all 64 million of them? Additionally, could you explain how you measure the impact of your work? We've talked a bit about Teal, but yeah, I think this is important in terms of creativity champions.
Yeah, sure. I mean, also it depends sort of me personally and other people in the team. So recently I stepped back from the sort of facilitation, sort of day-to-day facilitation of programs, which I used to do a lot of. So it's sort of, I personally feel less connected to them because I'm not in the room as much. But I think for example, all three of the teams, public leadership and partnership, will have a lot of connection with beneficiaries. I think I do, however, feel really connected to them because we do a lot of work around collecting stories and hearing from people. So during and also I always participate in the January Challenge, and sort of participating in the January Challenge always makes me feel like I'm alongside the other 160,000 people taking part. So for me, that's a really important moment in the year to sort of, remember what it feels like to be part of that and to be alongside that. We also are listening, we have lots and lots and lots of different feedback mechanisms across all of our different programs to make sure that we're listening to people and talking to people. So whether that's face-to-face through our team, or whether it's through TL and the work that we do with them, or through design of surveys, etc. So for us, that kind of feedback loop is really, really, really important. But yeah, so I think for this role as well, I think, we always really encourage people from across the whole team to go and see each other's work, because I think, and when this person comes into place, although you don't need to be at those leadership programs or go to some of the public programs events, we absolutely would encourage you to do that, because I think it's really important to get a sense of the work in that way.
Great, thanks, Jo. There's a question, the first question that Ravi's asked. I'm going to ask you, Jo, and then I'm going to answer a couple of quick ones while you think of the answer. So the question says, what was the last time someone didn't live up to your core values, and how was the conflict, misalignment, upskilling opportunity handled? What was the outcome for both parties? But while you think about that, I'm just going to answer a couple of quick ones. So there's a question Claire's asked about reimbursement for professional membership fees in addition to the personal learning and development budget. To be honest, I don't think that's something that's come up. So that would probably be a discussion, about what that specifically was, and probably it would some of it might come from that £1,000 allowance. But yeah, again, I think that would be a conversation. There's another practical question about finance, HR, and CRM systems. CRM is something that we talk about quite a lot, about adopting a CRM system, and we don't actually have one sort of at the moment. The members of the team are testing new systems. Finance is essentially, we work, it works in kind of Excel spreadsheets, and then the payroll is all managed by Beehive, so we don't really get into the sort of nuts and bolts of that. So hopefully that answers that. And there was one other one other quick one, which was about marketing and communications. It's not a specific part of this role to be in, but this person will be line managing the head of marketing and communications. So it's really about supporting them and help encouraging them to sort of manage their workload and think through what the priorities are around communications and marketing. So it's not about delivering that, but it's about sort of management role. But yeah, Jo, can I come back to you about that question about
I couldn't tell whether it's. I don't think it's. It seemed. I didn't know whether it's about the team or broader. I mean, it's very rare that happens in the team. I think that there are, because I think we are really values led in our recruitment process as well, and so it tends to be that people who are coming into the organization are very much on board with the values of the organization and the way in which we operate. I think the way that we deal with any sort of conflict that arises from that is really about open discussion as early as possible in the process, and to sort of make sure that we are meeting the needs of different people, adapting jobs, thinking about how we work with different people to make sure that they're able to do their best work, and to sort of understand why any sort of issues. We always take the attitude that if someone's having an issue with their work, it's sort of like, well, how can we support them, rather than sort of challenge that issue, support the reason behind it and work with them on that. Obviously, there are clients that sometimes come into conflict with our values. We're currently in the middle of dealing with one of those right now, in which someone has kind of potentially in breach of copyright of a program that we ran. Something that I think is really important is to go into everything that we do with trust. And I think when you arrive at people with trust, they tend to respond in that way. And when they don't, I try to sort of say, sometimes people let you down, and that is really sad, but it doesn't mean that everyone else is going to let you down. So I think one thing that I really try to maintain is that doesn't mean that we're suddenly going to lock down and sue everyone. And kind of, it means that what we're going to do is we're going to have an open conversation. We're going to try to resolve that situation as quickly and as well as possible. And then we're going to move on, still being as trusting as we are, whilst always being sensible. But yeah, for me, trust is really important in those situations.
Great, thank you. There's a question that Manish has asked about forthcoming initiatives around income generation. I'll have a quick go at this and then add anything, Jo and Tina. Essentially, like I mentioned, we do have a sort of fundraising pipeline, so we're fairly regularly in contact with trusts and foundations, and talking to the people who fund us already, and seeking out new opportunities for funding. And we also have Jo mentioned Creative Courage is a brand new program that's literally the deadline for people to apply for it was yesterday. So it's literally that is a new kind of income generation opportunity. And we maintain our existing programs, and then we are always thinking about kind of new things. And the day that Tina mentioned yesterday with the board was very much about that. What are our kind of what will be next year's version of Creative Courage? What are the future programs that we're going to develop alongside maintaining the work that we're already doing? Do you want to add anything, Jo?
And just in terms of sponsorship, so basically sponsorship is an area that we haven't really explored before, and we sort of had several stumbling blocks around. But we run a national program that has 160,000 people taking part, and a reach on social media of 8 million. It is it has loads of great branded content, all of that sort of stuff. So it's a really great opportunity, I think, sponsorship, that and that feels like something that we're going to be trying to tackle this year.
Great. There's a question here from James related to growth and strategy. Do people taking part in the January challenge or the creative prompt for the year join 64 as a local artist practitioners delivering creative services in their communities? I think we have these people called Creativity Champions, which is funded partly through Arts Council and Esme Fairbairn, and those are people we're recruiting for the next cohort of those people right now. So they will work with us to deliver a creative prompt or an activity or a workshop in their locality. Some of them are communities of kind of practice or interest. Some of them are based in a very specific geography. And we train them and develop them, and we pay them and support them to deliver activities. So, and with that model's working really well. So we're trying to sort of expand that out. So hopefully that kind of and build that sort of community of people that we're engaging with. There's a question here.
And just
sorry, go on.
No, it's fine. I was just saying, creativity champions is complicated because we would say everyone is great. We do a lot of work with creativity champions who are unpaid, who are just doing it because it's part of their job or because they love it or whatever. And then we're sort of targeting creativity champions. And one of the things that, thinking about inclusion and how we work, paying people who represent communities that we are, have had previous less engagement or whatever is looking at how we, nurture them and help them and support them to grow work in their communities is something that's really important. So that's often where those sort of paid opportunities come in, as the sort of the people. Yeah.
Great. There's another question I'm going to ask you both, and then I'll answer a quick, easy one in between while you think about the answer. So the question is, if there was one or two skills or experiences lacking in a candidate that would rule them out, what would they be? And conversely, what would be the one or two things that would make you really excited about the candidate? And as Joe and Tina will be the people doing the final interviews, then I'll give them the chance to think about that. There is another question about which specific roles are likely to report into the Chief Operating Officer, which I'll answer. So that's head of marketing communications and a team administrator, both are sort of directly report to that. We're, as the team expands, we're thinking about kind of how that might shift and how that might change, and also to at the moment the heads of different programs report to Joe, which seems sensible, but we also want to make sure that if there's ways of kind of helping them pastorally through the COO to give Joe a little bit more space and time, we might do that. So that I think one of the things, and this is perhaps the opportunity as well to say that we've called the job Chief Operating Officer because it feels like that describes the job. But we do imagine that someone might come and have an inventive new title for the role, and I think the role could flex, and grow with that person. So I think there's an opportunity for that. But do you want to come back on the one or two skills that might rule someone out, or that might rule them right in? And I don't know, Tina, do you want to go
first? I'm happy to go first. This is such an interesting question. So I think for me, I wouldn't say I don't like to approach these things as a binary. So I don't like to say you have this or you don't have this, or I like to see things more in terms of like a kind of grade of experience. And so I think for me, what I think would be good to see more of in those interested in this role is the ability to kind of hold balance. And by that I mean, so there's definitely a part of this role that's about, helping to strengthen and reinforce the container of 64. And so we need someone who can do that, so who understands the systems and the processes and the logic and all of those things to kind of create a really robust container. But then there is also the softer piece, right? So there is the people piece, there is the culture piece. And so I think for me, someone in this role, ideally I'd like to see someone who can balance both. So who can do that kind of structural bit, but can also do the cultural bit as well.
Agreed. Yeah, I would say that, we're always really open around kind of the kinds of experience different people have. But I think the kind of confidence to sort of hold that team and to know that the team, that team can rely on you. I think, for me, that really helps, because I think when the team can rely on that senior figure, then it allows me to be out of the organization. So sort of confidence in managing a large team, because although you're directly managing to, it does feel like we're responsible for everyone. I think there's also something for me that's exciting about that kind of appetite for being radical. So something around kind of, we take a radical approach to how we look after people in the organization. We are always trying to be as flexible as possible. So whilst it's really important, obviously, to keep an eye on the business and the business needs, to me, people come first. And so really being able to sort of stretch around, for the way that we think about people might be quite different to a lot of organizations. And we're always trying to sort of question ourselves to say, are we thinking about this? Are we doing this because that's just the way we think it should always be done? Or are we doing it because actually this could be the best way to do it? And that ability to kind of sort of, balance that need for structures and, forward thinking and, holding and containing, like Tina says, with the ability to be like, let's just try this out and see what happens. So I think for me, that, you know, yeah. But yeah, in terms of actual practical skills and experience, I think it's really about whatever you feel you need to be able to do those things is what we think.
Great. There's a good question here from Lena, which I'll read out, and then I'll answer Georgina's while you think about the answer. But so I'll read Lena's question, which says, it's really visible from the webinar on your website that the emphasis on embracing equality. How do you try to integrate inequality in experience and opportunities from differing socioeconomic backgrounds in your program's objectives and purpose? So while you think about that, Georgina's asked a question about feedback. Yeah, feedback's really important for us. Our relationship with Teal, as Joe has described, is a really, you know, is a very important to us and is growing in its importance. And we really want to keep working to think harder about how we measure impact, because for us, the whole purpose of the organization is growing the understanding of what creativity can bring to people's lives and to communities. Internally, we're just about to go through our annual review process where everybody asks for strengths-based feedback from different members of the team. You have a specific number of people that you kind of go to in order to complete your annual review. So I've just had Sarah just sent me the requests that I've had from different team members for those. But we also have regular kind of appreciation opportunities. So we have in our team meetings, we do a little shout outs and calls for help and so on. So I think we do we have quite structured ways of meeting that really are about getting feedback and asking kind of questions of the team. But yeah, to go back to Lena's question, yeah, Joe, do you want to say something about kind of thinking about different experiences and how we go about kind of supporting people who've got, who've had lived experience that's different, particularly in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds in our work?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, for example, in the public programme, there's a really clear strategy about how we work on things like recruitment of creativity champions, thinking about how we kind of, one of the reasons for looking at creativity champions as a model, so that sort of cascade model, is because, we don't really believe that we're the right people to like zoom into a place, be like, here's some creativity and zoom out. What's really important when thinking about creativity and kind of embedding creativity is to allow it to be led by, people who are in the communities, where, again, whether that's a community of interest, a geographical community, community of experience. So there are particular areas. So for example, we know that certainly in our work, but also broadly in creativity and arts, like actually men are really underrepresented in our work. So we've been doing men's groups and doing some particular work. We actually have a really high percentage of disabled people taking part in our work, but because of the online nature of it and the ability to be part of a community from a distance and lots of different reasons. But again, so really working with some of the champions, sort of disability champions and people who are sort of keen to help us develop that work, again, paying people properly, working with them in that area. Same with people of colour, like we are, again, working with artists who are, working in a particular community. So that's the kind of strategy, is basically, constantly listening to sort of feedback, working out where there are gaps, helping basically working alongside and properly remunerating people that we're working with in order to help us kind of spread into different communities. 7 or 8 years ago, we were very much like, everyone's creative, everyone can be involved in our work. And it's, quite quickly you realize that when you say everyone, that tends to exclude minorities, communities really quickly. And actually the only way to do it is to sort of say, okay, here's here's how we invite, but also recognizing that creativity already exists everywhere and it looks different for different people. So that's something we're sort of constantly evolving, but always kind of in collaboration with people and always thinking about how the sort of equity in that process. Something we're also trying to do more of is, for example, when we are working on most of our client work, it tends to be that they are working, they are bringing people to the program. So that's something we've had to work on quite a lot, is helping them think through inequality and diversity from more than a kind of tokenistic level, and really thinking about how we include people in the room. And then also thinking, as we develop this partnership work, like how are we, whilst balancing a business need to bring money in, how are we also thinking about what programs can we offer where a client can pay us, but we're also working with people that we feel will really benefit from the work. So basically, it's something that is at the forefront of our mind all the time in our programs, and it's something that we are kind of constantly adapting.
Great, thank you. I'm really conscious of time, but Tina, quick last word sort of on that, and maybe more. Yeah, anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Well done. Great.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. Thank you everybody for coming along. Hopefully that's helpful. If there's questions that we haven't answered, my email is in the job description and on the website. So do just get in touch directly with me.
And if you
or come on to the next webinar
next week, yeah, or watch the recordings. Thanks so much, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.